Hello and welcome to episode 25 of the not Devi to Dynasty. We are now the official Couch Scouts podcast. It's going to take
Couch
us.
Scouts.
Welcome to the Couch Scouts podcast, episode 25. I'm your host, Matt Jackson. With me, as always, I've got my co-host, Matt Cooper.
What's up?
And Matt Rupert.
How's it going?
Guys, sorry for that blunder, man. How are you guys doing outside of that?
Hey, it's part of the business, man. When we rebrand, we were Devi to Dynasty Film Room for a long time.
I got so used to saying it that we're the Couch Scouts now. That's something to be excited about.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited to be back with you guys tonight. Tonight, of course, as you guys know, we're going to be continuing our Inside the Prospect series. Tonight, we're looking at the wide receiver position, and we're talking about two guys that have seen their stock rise post-combine. Are these guys somebody that should be worth targeting? Well, we're going to talk about that and break that down for you guys tonight. Of course, we're talking about South Carolina's Xavier Legette and Florida's Ricky Pearsall. If you guys are interested where we're getting all this film that we're watching, make sure you guys sign up for the Dynasty Nerds Film Room. Use code COOP for 15% off. Now's a great time to really get in there and start watching all those all 22 films that we have on there. You can become a Couch Scout just like us and watch and start breaking down these guys yourself. If you guys are interested in making some of the cut-ups that you guys see on our Twitter page, make sure there's going to be a link for Opus and the description of this. Make sure you click that link, sign up for Opus. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive straight on in. And guys, the first guy that I really want to talk about is South Carolina's Xavier Legette. He's a 6'1", 221-pound senior. Those are official numbers right now. Former four-star prospect, the number 17 athlete in his class. He was the 10th in athleticism, 10th ranked guy in athleticism score at the combine, and that's just something I wanted to throw in there for perspective. It's important to note, though, before we really dive into Legette, I want to kind of set the basis of this conversation with this. Legette had next to no production his entire career, less than 200 yards all 4 years until his fifth-year senior year, where he had 1,255 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns. So that'll be the basis for this conversation. And the first thing that we want to talk about, as always, are his route running, his release. I'm going to start with you, Cooper. What did you really notice when it came to Legette's route running?
Well, he is not like new Carolina Panthers receiver Deontay Johnson. I can tell you that right now.
2.5 minutes into the show, and we're already going.
You think we could get through an intro on this show and not even mention, with two Panthers fans on here, that we just traded for Deontay Johnson? Come on, man. I'm pretty excited about that. I love Deontay Johnson. I think he's been held back by his situation the last few years, and he's an incredible route runner and always open, and just what hopefully Bryce Young needs to get his early development back on track. But this is not a free agent.
All you guys need now is a quarterback, running back, some offensive linemen, the defense, new owner. You guys are taking steps in the right direction,
man. Just take the wins when we get them, because they have been few and far between for a while now. But this is not a free agency show. There are a lot of those. In fact, my friend Mike Cash is doing one, I think, at 8:30 right after this. So go check him out. But there's a lot of free agency shows. That's not really what we do. We get in here and we scout and we talk about the film. So we're going to continue plugging right along with our rookie series. And as far as the route running goes with Xavier Legette, I'll get us back on topic here. I didn't expect to be impressed, honestly. You try to go into a film watch pretty unbiased and just go where the film leads. But everything that I knew about the guy, so didn't produce it all till his 5th year. He's big, he's fast, he's a contested catch guy. I didn't expect to see a lot of great route running, and I didn't. So I've been doing this long enough to kind of know when I see a profile, like, what's probably coming. And in this case, I was right. There were maybe 3. I watched 3 games, every snap of the all 22. And I saw maybe 3 routes where I was like, oh yeah, that was a nice route. Nice, crisp, planted his foot, snappy at the break, manipulated the defense, got open 3 times in 3 games. Most of his routes I thought were pretty rounded off. Took him a lot of steps to decelerate if it was a comeback route. So overall, I felt like very unrefined, very stiff in his hips a little bit. Just kind of not overly impressive. And versus press, he's a big guy, so I'm expecting, okay, he's gonna win versus press. Not really that much winning against press either. I felt like he would just have a guy on his hip, and that guy would stay on his hip, and he wasn't doing anything to get him off of his hip. And that's why he had so many contested catch opportunities, because he was a big target. And when everything else would fail, Rattler would kind of throw up a jump ball to him. But most of the time, it wasn't like, oh, he won on his route and he's open, so he earned the target, and it was an uncontested catch there. I just didn't see very many of those. So, yeah, we just this week started to implement a grading system. We're still in the experimentation phase with like how much we're going to weight each trait and all that kind of stuff. But we graded these guys on a scale of 1 to 10 for these traits that we're talking about. And just to give you guys a little bit of context on this, a 4 out of 10 would have been like average college, like what you would expect from a college level player. So a 6 is what you would expect from an average NFL player. So 6 out of 10 might feel like, oh, that's disrespectful or whatever. That's a low grade. But 6 out of 10, that's like, okay, he's NFL caliber in this area. And then 7 is like, man, he's good. He's above average even for an NFL player. So we really like 9 and 10. This is for like the elite of the elite. We didn't give out a lot of these. So just to give you a little context on the grading. But for me, I gave him a 5 on the route running. So acceptable, but a little bit below average for an NFL route runner. And I gave him a 4 for the release versus press coverage. So average college level, but pretty well below what you would expect from a starting NFL wide receiver. So, yeah, kind of fun to be able to put numbers on it. And it'll be interesting to have that to go back to at the end of the year and say, all right, this is how I graded this guy. This is how I graded that guy. So I've been talking for a long time, so I'm going to pass it off. Rupert, what did you notice?
The exact same thing. I think he was a little bit better at the stem of his route, but where I really think that he was really held back was his release package just wasn't really there. I saw the same thing, struggled against press, had guys in his hip pocket pretty much every route. When guys were playing off is when he would be able to get open. He was able to stop pretty quickly and, kind of cut in or come back on a comeback route, which was a little surprising for his size. So I agree with you. I think he was, kind of middle of the pack. Not the worst route runner I've seen in the class, but definitely below pretty much everyone else.
I might have been a little lower on him. I thought he was really stiff in his routes. I mean, I noted some of the same things you did, Cooper. He rounded off his routes a lot. It seemed like he would try to give head fakes, little jab steps to get the defender off angle and on his hip pocket, and they never really worked out for him. I mean, they did, like you said, maybe 2 or 3 times, but he just didn't look like a solid route runner to me. I didn't really like his release package. I mean, I gave him less than you guys did. I gave him a 4 in release and route running, which is average for a college wide receiver. I didn't think this was an area that was a strong suit for him. One thing that I kind of want to talk about is he, and I know we've made this comp off air, but I want to bring this to actually this podcast. Is he in the next Jonathan Mingo? Now we're talking about Carolina wide receivers. I know we just kind of tease that a little bit. Somebody
Don't make me frown. You too, man.
Doesn't really do a whole lot, gets way overhyped, and then he gets in the NFL and you're like, oh, this guy was exactly who we thought he was pre-combine.
I like him a little bit better than I liked Mingo last year. I mean, I just didn't get it. There was no competition. I mean, this isn't a Jonathan Mingo podcast. There was no competition at Ole Miss when he was there. And his best season was like 800 yards, and it was as a senior. But at least like this year, Legette put up that 1,200, 1,300 yard. Like he at least had one dominant season. Mingo never had that. I thought his ball skills were a lot better, which we're not talking about that yet, but his ball skills to me were a lot better than what I ever saw out of Jonathan Mingo. So they both are athletic and both were pretty unproductive for most of their college career. So I can see that comp. But I think the difference one is Mingo was more expensive. He was going like early second round of rookie drafts, was a top 5 wide receiver in the class for most people last year. Whereas Legette, you can usually get him in the 3rd round of rookie drafts right now. And then the other difference is that I feel like while they're both very athletic, I think Legette knows how to use his athleticism a little bit more at the catch point. Whereas Mingo was more of a yak guy. He wasn't like if he had one high level trait, it was going to be his yards after catch. Whereas I feel like for Legette, it's ball skills, which is more important to me. So,
well, let's go ahead and talk about that because that was an area that I think was his strong suit, right? His body control, his hands, his contested catch ability, his catch radius. I mean, some of these things just because we've already teased you our ranking system a little bit. I gave him a 7.5 in contested catch, which is a little above average for an NFL wide receiver. I gave him an 8 across the board for catch radius and body control. I think his ability to high point the ball, to make really tough catches, to utilize his size to go up and get the ball was a real strong suit for him. He's got great body control, and that was all over his film. But what did you guys notice? I'll start with you, Rupert. Did you see the same thing, or did you see something different?
Yeah, the exact same thing. He's the exact same size, I think, as A.J. Brown, and he kind of looked like him, going up between defenders and snatching the ball out of the air. And he looks really fluid when he's jumping and high pointing the ball. He's able to kind of contort a little bit, and he tracked the ball very well as well.
What about you, Cooper?
Yeah, I mean, this was we're trying to withhold the word elite until it's actually true, but it was pretty close. I mean, I gave him an 8.5 for catch radius, 8.5 for body control, 8 for contested catch, which those would grade out as being like great, even by NFL standards in those areas. So there were the way he was contorting his body to catch stuff that was not thrown right on his frame, the way he was able to go up and high point, like legitimately high point, like higher than the cornerback could actually get to, like, ha, can't reach me. I'm just going to catch it over your head. He has those kind of ball skills, and one of the better guys in the class that we've studied so far from that standpoint. So maybe not quite elite, but very, very high level in this category. And then for hands, I gave him a 7, which is still really good grade, but just I noticed, I think, 2 drops in the 3 games that I watched. So I gave him a 7 instead of an 8 for hands, but he was mostly catching it with his hands. They were concentration drops. It wasn't like he had a technique issue or he was body catching or anything like that. So still, I would say overall pretty good hands.
And I think a lot of that speaks to his athleticism, right? Just kind of springing forward a little bit. I mean, he's got that size speed combo, and he knows how to utilize his size. I didn't note him of being somebody that played weaker than his size dictated he should play. So I think he's got the athleticism that you want to see for a wide receiver. Would you guys agree with that?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, he was almost like a 10 out of 10 RAS guy at the combine, and that shows on tape too, I'd say. I mean, even speed-wise, he consistently on these deeper routes had DBs on their heels. I mean, if you're not running great routes, but you put up 1,300 yards in the SEC, that tells me like you're doing really good at something. And for him, I mean, just the speed on those deep routes, the ball skills on those contested catches, like those were the ways that he was winning. And I mean, honestly, like if he could develop in using that speed better, like get the DB on his heels and then stick that foot in the ground and all of a sudden snap off into a corner route or into a dig, like that would be really, really hard to guard. Or even the comeback route. Like if he could master the comeback route and sinking his hips and stopping on a dime and watch the DB go flying by him just as a counter to that speed, that in and of itself, like that's limited fantasy upside, but there's a role there in the NFL for a guy like that. So sorry.
Well, I think the ceiling, the outlier that we all think of is DK Metcalf, right? Somebody that tested explosively at the combine, is big, is fast. But when we watched this film, like every analyst was like, this guy doesn't really run great routes. So not that I'm saying by any stretch of the imagination that Xavier Legette's going to be DK Metcalf. I don't believe that at all. But like that's the ceiling, right? Like that's what you want somebody, a guy like that, to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, because DK Metcalf, even though it didn't show up, I guess, on his college tape, I don't know. I wasn't studying DK Metcalf when he was a prospect. I got into content creation later than that, but in the NFL, he sure is a pretty good route runner. You know, he's not just winning with athleticism. So Legette would have to develop in that area, I think.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that I didn't see a lot of, so I wouldn't necessarily count this, I guess, as a strength or a weakness, was his yards after the catch ability. I gave him a 5 on that, which was acceptable, right, according to our rankings. A lot of times I just didn't see it. It wasn't on his film. He would catch a ball and he wouldn't really break loose from a tackle. There were several times that I noted where like he was one-on-one with a defender on the outside and he just either went out of bounds or kind of got tackled by the sideline, where I would have wanted him to break that up the field, break down that first defender and keep moving, but he just didn't do that. Did you guys see, I'll start with you, Rupert. Did you see any yak ability from him at all?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of, a product of the system he was in. Like he wasn't really used kind of in yak situations. Like he didn't get a lot of screens, didn't get a lot of like mesh routes, crossing routes, things like that. I saw him, I think 3 times, kind of show that yak ability, break some tackles, get up the field, and he looked good in those situations. And also I think a product of, having guys draped on him. So he catches the ball and then gets tackled right away because the guy's right on his hip. But I think he has that in his game. It just didn't show up a ton.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't really knock him for it, but I'd say he's probably a little above average due to his athleticism. He's a big guy. He's tough to bring down. Cornerbacks, in the 3 instances I saw in 2 games I watched, they're just kind of falling off of him.
I actually saw quite a few tunnel screens. So I felt like I saw some reverses, jet sweep type of thing. So I felt like they were trying to get him in situations where he could use yards after the catch because he was one of the better athletes on the football team and he wasn't winning in the short to intermediate routes. So they had to get the ball in his hands somehow. So it was a lot of this kind of gadgety stuff that they were giving him. And I didn't really see him do a whole lot with it. Now, granted, he played some pretty good defenses. Like I watched the Georgia game. I watched Clemson, Florida. Like all those teams had pretty solid defenses. And so they were kind of rallying and gang tackling. And it was kind of like, what did you expect? Was he going to break 4 tackles? Like, no, probably not. So I don't know how much more he could have done. But that being said, I think I saw him break 1 tackle in 3 games. And I gave him a pretty low score for quickness, which I think plays into it. So he's fast in a straight line, but he's not very quick in short areas. So he's not really going to make a lot of guys miss in those situations after the catch. So it's kind of like if a tunnel screen opens up and he's kind of got the Red Sea parted in front of him, he's fast and he can house it. And he's big, so maybe he breaks a tackle, but I don't think he's really making anybody miss. And if you look at the underlying metrics like yards after catch per attempt and things like that, he grades pretty low in most of those things. So I also gave him a 5 in this.
And just to wrap up run blocking, I mean, I noticed that he was somebody that, he was holding his blocks well for some of the run and pass plays that I saw him actually blocking for. I didn't think this was an area that was a weakness for him. Like I said earlier, I feel like he utilizes his size well. He's got some strength to him. So did you guys see the same thing? Did you guys see some run blocking maybe that I didn't see?
Yeah, I thought he was actually good in this area. Size really helps. But he was willing to get in there. He, trying walk in like at the inside angle, if the running back's trying to run up the middle or get on the outside if they're trying to go outside. So I kind of thought I saw like, that dog in him, which, a lot of NFL teams are really going to like and probably convince themselves to draft him higher than they probably should.
Yeah, so between that and like fighting through contact on routes, I thought he did pretty good at both of those things, which he's like 220 or something. He's not just tall, he's one of the bigger bodied wide receivers in the class. So it makes sense. I gave him a pretty good score for physicality. So Overall, I will say, just as we're wrapping up talking about this, our model that we're still tweaking, and we'll see, but we have weighted it to where route running is the most important, because this is our philosophy. Route running, that's how you earn targets, that's how you get volume, that's how you score fantasy points. Secondary is ball skills, which he was obviously very good in. And then athleticism and yards after catch is a little bit less important than route running and ball skills to us. And so when you factor in our grades and those weights, our tape score for him came out to average a 61.94 out of 100, which would grade him out as an average backup in the NFL. So, or average backup on your fantasy team, not a guy that you're going to want to start consistently in your fantasy lineup. And I feel comfortable with that. Like I think unless he developed as a route runner, I don't think he is going to be a guy that you want to plug in your fantasy starting lineup. So, that's where we're at with him. About a 62 out of 100, which grades out to a backup on your fantasy team at this point. So, yeah, awesome. Our first little dabble into putting grades on these guys.
Well, let's go into somebody that I feel like, at least for me, was a little more fun to watch and did a little more stuff that I liked, and that's Florida's Ricky Pearsall, 6'1", 189-pound senior. He was a former 3-star prospect, the number 182 wide receiver in his class. Guys, get this. He ranked 8th at the combine with his athleticism score. So 2 spots above, actually, Xavier Legette, based on his athleticism score. Consistently was around the last 3 seasons, around the 500, 600-yard mark. Almost hit 1,000 yards this season. So, again, one of the first things we're going to talk about is just route running. And for this, when we get to Pearsall, I really like his route running. I gave him a 7 on his release, which, of course, as we've been talking about, is a good. It's above average for an NFL wide receiver, and I gave him a 8.5 actually on his route running. I personally, guys, loved his route running. The way he was able to sink his hips. He was very quick in short area situations. His quickness to be able to explode through routes. I mean, there were several routes where I paused and we ran and watched 3 or 4 times because I was I literally wrote filthy on my notes. I just believe he's a fantastic route runner, and I was a little higher on him than I think y'all were. So I'm excited to hear y'all's thoughts. I'll start with you, Cooper.
Yeah, I mean, I loved him as a route runner too. I ended up grading him as, let's see, I gave him a 7 for his release against press coverage and 8 for route running. So only half a point lower than what you gave him. And 8 is a very, very good score. So, yeah, I thought particularly against press, he was a little bit more limited. He's much smaller than Legette, who we just talked about. He is more profiles, I think, more as a slot guy. He did play a lot outside at Florida, but I think, due to some of his athletic limitations, which we'll talk about, more of a slot guy, and that hurt him against press coverage, I think some. And his footwork really was not amazing against press. But at the stem of the route, he was fantastic. Just very, very twitchy, very manipulative, would frequently put his foot in the ground and get the defender's hips turned the wrong way, get wide open. So I loved his route running, was a little bit less impressed with his release against press.
Yeah, the top of his routes were fantastic. I mean, he was consistently getting 4 and 5 yards of separation when I watched him run routes. I mean, he's such a, like you said, you used the word twitchy, and I believe that's what he is. He's a super twitchy, fluid athlete. Rupert, what'd you see on this area?
Same thing. He's very smooth, and he's very nuanced in his route running. He really understood coverage. I could tell. Multiple instances where, they may be playing cover 3, like the cornerback's playing off, but with inside techniques. So he's running like a little post, but he starts off further inside to try and beat him out, and then actually he's going to corner and then breaks it back inside. Just like the way he was really able to set up defenders, he kind of knew what coverage he was looking at, I could tell, and he was able to manipulate the defenders, which I thought was really great. I agree he struggled against press a little bit. He played slot. They had to use him in motion a lot, so I think they kind of knew his limitations there based on that. I think maybe if he puts on weight and then works on his release package, he has the quickness to be able to, develop that. So I'd be really interested to see if, he develops that in the pros. And I think that's why I'm so excited about him, because like he still has room to grow. And it seems like he has all the athleticism for it.
Yeah. I noticed several good releases. I mean, I wouldn't say he's necessarily, and you guys aren't saying it either because you gave him a 7 on release. I mean, that's still a good grade. I know it sounds like it's low, but it's still a good grade. So I mean, there were several times
3 points higher than what I graded Legette. So
yeah, I mean,
who's bigger and should theoretically be better against press.
Yeah, he had several good releases, so I don't think, definitely not an area of weakness on him. One thing that I think I love more than I expected to love coming in and watching him was his ball skills, right? Specifically speaking, his ability to have great body control and really track the ball well in the air. I didn't see him as somebody that was able to do this well, but when I came to his film, there were several plays, and we've been texting back and forth in our group chat where the safeties are closing in on him. He goes up, high points the ball well, and just makes a really tough body control style catch. Tracking the ball was one of those areas where it's hard to really grade because you don't see a lot of instances of it happening, right? There's not a lot of deep balls thrown to these guys. So you might see it 2, 3, 4 times at most when you watch these guys film. But every time that I saw it, he was doing it really well. Tracking the ball well, catching it over his back shoulder, extending well to the ball. I graded him out when it came to ball skills. I mean, his hands, I graded him out at an 8. I thought he had really good hands. He was acceptable in contested catch situations and didn't really do that a lot. But I mean, his body control and his ball tracking. I mean, I gave him 7.5 for his body control and ball tracking, 7.5 for body control and an 8 for his ball tracking. I mean, I thought those were really good strengths for him. I'll start with you, Rupert. What did you notice in his ball skills area?
I agree. Same. I felt like he got a little too arrogant with his hands. In 2 instances in the games I watched, he should have put out 2 hands. And he basically was just like trying to show off, I mean, it was a little far out, but he just stuck out one hand and ended up dropping it, where I felt like he should have gone with 2 hands for it. And then another time he just had a concentration drop on a little tunnel screen. But other than that, really good hands. He was a natural hands catcher. Didn't see anybody catching at all. And I saw the same thing on the deep balls and shots that he got. He tracked the ball really well. Some like kind of slot fades where he's having to track it all the way over his opposite shoulder. He did a good job with that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Overall, I thought his hands were incredible. There was not a lot of contested catch that I saw. It just wasn't his game. We mentioned he's kind of more of a slot guy anyway. He just wasn't in a lot of those situations. I gave him a 5 for contested catch and a 5 for catch radius. I didn't feel like he had super long arms or, great vertical or, he's not that tall. 6'1" not tiny, but he's not that tall. So catch radius, I felt like was just okay. But that being said, his body control was fantastic. I think I gave him an 8 out of 10 for body control. His hands were really sticky, really reliable. He caught everything extended out of his frame. He didn't catch anything inside of his body. I gave him an 8.5 for hands, and I gave him a 8 for body control and an 8 for ball tracking. So overall, I thought his ball skills were very, very good. Just not much of a contested catch guy, but very, very reliable hands and somebody that you can trust him. You're going to throw it to him on a key 3rd down and he's going to be open and you're going to hit him in the hands and he's not going to drop it. It's not going to be a Kadarius Toney, right? He's He kind of looked like a Mr. Reliable. And I saw a lot too where like a ball was thrown behind him and he would like contort his body and reach backwards across his frame to pull it in. And
It was more Julian Edelman than Kadarius Toney.
yeah, more Julian Edelman than Kadarius Toney for sure. So yeah, I liked what I saw in the ball skills for Mr. Pearsall here.
Moving on, talking about his yards after the catch ability. Again, the two guys that we watched tonight or today, I just didn't really feel like really had an opportunity to show off yards after the catch all that often. I think Pearsall got more opportunity than Legette did, and he just didn't do a lot with it, but he wasn't horrible with it. I mean, I noted several instances of him getting, 5 or 6 extra yards downfield, fighting through contact and just getting some extra yak that he wouldn't necessarily get, but I didn't see that all over his film. So I gave him a 5. It was an acceptable grade. Not bad, not great, just kind of what he did, what I think he needed to do. Start with you, Cooper. His yards after the catch, did you see anything in his games that you were watching?
Yeah, I mean, I saw them use him in that way. They were, he was brought in motion a lot. He would kind of run behind. A lot of their run game was set up because he would like fake a jet sweep and they'd fake like they were handing off to him and then they'd give it to the running back. So of course, to keep defenses honest, you had to actually give it to him sometimes. And, or he'd split out into the flat and they'd throw it to him in the flat, but he didn't really do anything. Like if the blocking was there, he'd follow his blocks, but the first guy to get to him tackled him every single time. I never saw him make somebody miss. I also gave him a 5. I thought that was his weakest area of his game. To me, especially for a guy who tested as well as he did at the combine, with a 4.41 40 and some good jump, broad jump, vertical jump, like he tested as somebody who was explosive and fast, but he didn't look that explosive or that fast on film. Especially in the after the catch area. So like when he would get deep downfield on some vertical like routes, he could build up to some good speed. But in those short areas where he's trying to make a guy miss in the phone booth, he just didn't look like he was an explosive cutter or explosive acceleration. So yeah, just looked very, very average after the catch to me.
I would agree with that. I was expecting more. The first, couple snaps I saw him where, he's snapping off routes. I'm seeing that quickness. And I was expecting to see that kind of translate over the yak. So it was a little confusing to see it not. Again, like, I agree with y'all, like, just middle of the road. Like, I wouldn't really knock him completely for it, but it's just, I was expecting it to be a big part of his game, and it just wasn't from what I saw.
Yeah, and I mean, that kind of goes into that conversation of athleticism, right? I felt like he was a good athlete. I mean, he showcased the ability once he got downfield and once he built his speed up. He was a pretty fast wide receiver in the open field. One thing that I really noticed about him was his short area quickness. I feel like I rated him higher. I think I rated him higher on that than y'all did. Just the top of his routes, his short area quickness to break off his routes. That was, again, a strong suit for him. I gave him an 8 for that. 7 on game speed and burst. So, I mean, they were good. They were a plus for him. But again, like you guys were saying, just his ability to make a man miss in the phone booth. It's not exactly there all the way. So you guys want to talk on his athleticism, his burst, his short area quickness, any?
I gave him a 7 for game speed. Like I said, I felt like he did have some good speed on some of those deep routes, was above average in that department. Looked at least as fast as Legette to me, who I also gave a 7 in that area. But only gave him a 6 for burst. And I gave him a 7 for quickness. But again, like I saw that quickness a lot on his routes. I didn't see it a lot after the catch. So overall, like I gave him decent athletic, like 7.67 for those athletic things. Or it's an above average athlete, and he tested that way at the combine. So the only like truly low score that I gave him was contested catch and yak. But yeah, overall for me, he graded out to about a 70, which would grade for us as a flex option in fantasy. So, which that makes sense.
69.77 on his right, which is a flex option. So we still like him, right? He's going to be somebody that you can plug in to your lineup especially on bye weeks and stuff like that. So I think he's somebody that you could target. Where would you guys round wise? I mean, I haven't seen any mock drafts recently. I don't necessarily know where he's going, but where would you guys feel comfortable taking him in a rookie mock?
I'd say back half of the second round.
Yeah, that might be about where I would take him to. The tricky part with him is that I think he's 24 years old. So he's an older prospect, and I think Legette is similar because he's a fifth-year senior. I don't have their age right in front of me. But when you combine like 24 years old as a rookie with flex option as what we're like grading him out as, like that's not exciting. You know, when I'm drafting a guy in the top half of the second round, I'm not trying to draft a 24-year-old flex option, right? Like I want to shoot a little higher than that. And I think, to be fair to Ricky, like, would it shock me if he was kind of in that Jaden Reed realm where he was more than a flex option and you could feel good starting him at wide receiver? No, it wouldn't shock me. So I'm not saying that flex is like his ceiling, but I don't know. It's the age combined with the lack of upside to me that cools me on a little bit. So I would agree that back half of the second round feels appropriate.
I just looked it up, and Xavier Legette is 23 years old, and Ricky Pearsall, I can't seem to find age 20. They're both 23. So again, like you were saying,
but Ricky Pearsall is his birthday's in September, so he's going to be 24 like as soon as the college season starts.
Important to note.
As a rookie.
Important to note. So, well, that about wraps us up for tonight, breaking down our two wide receiver prospects. I hope you guys enjoyed our small talk on the grading system. That's going to be something that we're going to be possibly introducing here sometime soon. So I hope you guys are looking forward to that. Before that, though, Cooper, do you want to tell everybody where they can find us on, or if they can find you on Twitter? Make sure you plug the Discord, because I forgot to plug the Discord at the beginning. So tell them where they can come and hang out with us, and anything else you want to let them know about.
Yeah, so you can find me on X at CouchScoutsFF, and the YouTube channel is youtube.com/@CouchScouts. So if you're listening on Apple, you want to come sub on YouTube, definitely do that. We'd love to have you come check that out. So we are also on Discord, so we'll have a link in the description on YouTube and the description on Apple if that's where you're watching. It'll be in the tweet that we send out about the show. So we'll have that invite link in a lot of different places. It's completely free to join. We're trying to build a community where it's not just y'all watching us talk once a week, but we can get to know you guys as well. And we're in there every day talking about trades. We were breaking all the free agency news and discussing it in the Discord over the last couple of days. Talking about these rookies. We were talking about the combine when that happened. So it's a fun community, a bunch of dynasty nuts. So if that's you and you want to find some people that you can hang out with every day and talk shop with, come join us in the Discord, and we'd love to have you in there.
Awesome. Rupert, where can they find you on Twitter, and what is your name on the Discord so everybody knows who they're interacting with?
Yeah, you can find me at Matthew Rupert FF on Twitter, and then I think it's just, I should need to look it up.
Just says Matthew Rupert for me in the Discord.
Yep, just Matthew Rupert. So made it easy for everybody.
Awesome. You guys can find me on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at Devi Matt. I'm in the Discord at Matthew Jackson at Devi Matt. So make sure you guys get on there, interact with us. As Cooper was saying, make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. If you are an Apple Podcast, we love a 5-star review and rating. That's how we get seen. That's how we get this advice out, so it can help other people. It can help you win your drafts this upcoming rookie season. But that's where you can find us. We're looking forward to our show next week. Make sure you guys stay tuned next Tuesday at 7:30 to see who we break down next on this Inside the Prospect series. But until next week, we will see you guys later.